What we're going to do today is we're going to kind of go over briefly sort of basic bits of information you'll need to use the course, and look at the basic frameworks that we'll be working with. And it's really designed to help you get from wherever your practice is now, and really that's an open-ended question. So wherever you're at now is perfectly fine, whether you're an advanced practitioner or you're just starting. But everyone kind of has a different view of yoga practice. But what we're going to be doing is looking at practices that balance the different aspects of ourselves, so that by the end of the course, we're prepared to move forward with a really well-rounded practice and a very clear understanding of what practices will balance you in which ways. So you can kind of emphasize some and de-emphasize others as the need arises. So these aspects of the self are called the koshas. Koshas translate in a lot of different ways. You'll hear them translated as the sheaths or the veils that veil us from our true self. When people talk about the true self in yoga, right, we're talking about the self that binds us all, the larger self. So in kind of traditional yoga, you might look at each aspect of ourselves as slightly a problem, right? Because they get in the way of us seeing our true self or our connection to all or our divinity. However, the way I was taught to look at them, which is also old, it's just slightly off the classical model, is that each aspect of yourself is very important and is divine in itself. And so what my work as a yoga therapist and as a yoga practitioner, my own practice, has been centered around is how do I and we contact each of these aspects of ourselves? How do we really understand them? And then what yoga practices are most potent for balancing each aspect of ourselves? So let's look at what these koshas are in the first place. There's a lot of models in the world to look at yourself. So this is not the only one. And I think it's important when you're studying any kind of, maybe Eastern philosophy, if you're a Westerner, to really understand that, it's not that the one you're using is better than another one. It's more that they're different and they're elegant in different ways. So this is from the koshic system is from the yoga tradition and the Ayurveda tradition. And so we're looking at the 5 aspects of the self. And I think they're really elegant way to look at it. So the koshas themselves, the first one, or the outermost layer, would be considered the physical body, and that's annamaya kosha. And that relates to your physical body and the functions of it, and obviously we need that to be working well most of the time, or things are difficult for us. And then the next layer would be the pranamaya kosha, and that is the pranic body or the energetic body. It is often linked to breath, and many of the practices for it will be centered around breath. But that is a different aspect of ourselves than the physical body, which we often work on with asana or physical yoga practice. So that's the second. The third kosha is manomaya kosha, or the kosha that relates to your conscious mind and thoughts. And so that's where you'll have a lot of things like philosophy or ideas would influence you greatly. And then also, as we'll see, there are technologies to get the thoughts to be more balanced. And another way to look at it would be more calm, if that's what you're going for. So we'll be looking at that. The fourth kosha is the Vijnanamaya kosha. And I like to call that either the intuition mind or the unconscious mind. You can use either of those phrases, but that's the part of your mind that exists sort of beyond or below your working conscious mind, so that when your Vijnanamaya kosha is in balance, you're able to hear your intuition and information that comes from the place that's not in the conscious processes. So that's important. And often you hear people say, I'm very intuitive, right? That's because they're in touch with their Vijnanamaya kosha. And then finally, the innermost or the fifth kosha is Ananda Maya kosha. Ananda means bliss in Sanskrit. And it's the part of us that is, it's considered the heart. And it's also the part of us that's connected to the universe and other people. And with these five koshas, it's important that all of them are tended to and that we're in balance as best we can across sort of our koshic body. And when we're not, different things result. We can get different diseases, either dis-ease or disease, depending on the kosha. And that's where often you will hear people saying, say my hip hurts, and then I had this insight, and then my hip stopped hurting, so it must have been emotional or something. So I might say, oh, well, that makes sense because that is you getting in touch with your Vijnanamaya kosha and then balancing that, and now your hip pain's gone. Now, of course, it's just as likely that you have hip pain and you're like, I had this big insight and my hip still hurts. And that's because the Vijnanamaya kosha wasn't the issue, right? Your physical body, right, was the issue. And so you cleared it up there. So it's important to tend to each of them. And often, as you get more in touch with each kosha, it becomes more obvious which koshas are giving you trouble. So that's how I like to think about it. In terms of deepening your practice, I think that balance, right, is extremely important, is sort of radicalizing your thinking around how important this is. So in some traditions and the way some people think about it, it's like we're going further and further and further with one technique or one idea. And if we get all the way with that one idea, we will become enlightened. So I'm just going to say, for the record, that's probably true. However, for most people who live as householders, which you probably are if you're taking an online course, you're probably not a monk, you're probably not living on an ashram, but maybe you are. But for most people living what you would consider, regular lives, families, friends, obligations, having to deal with money and children and pets and taking care of your parents and all these things. For us, that model isn't so useful. And because we can't do that. We can't meditate 14 hours a day. We can't sort of ignore these large aspects of our lives in the name of enlightenment. I mean, anyone could choose to do anything, but if you haven't chosen to do that, the model we're going to be working with, I think, will be much more appealing. So especially those of you who are yoga teachers or have studied yoga for a while, and you're seeing that, it's really, really helped you, and you're wondering what's next, like how do I deepen my practice? How do I get more of this yoga thing in my life? And that's what this course is about. So balancing each of these koshas and really looking at each of these koshas and doing practices, which can be very simple actually, but of course you have to be organized and mindful and have discipline in all practice. By using these practices, what you're going to find is in each aspect of yourself, you get more and more grounded and more balanced. And when you are truly balanced, right, you can see across your koshas. You get information from all your koshas. So you get information from your physical body that leads you more towards your spiritual self. And you get information from your energetic body, right? Deep balance in your energetic body leads you to more experience, right, of the greater self. And then deeper balance in your mental body, make sure those thoughts don't get in the way, right? They just come and go and they're very useful to you. And that again grounds you in reality and then lets you see the deeper aspects of yourself. Balance in your Vijnanamaya kosha, your intuition body, allows those deeper thoughts, those deeper pieces of information that maybe, you've had trouble decision making, or you're not sure, like kind of what your life's purpose is, and you're looking for information from the universe. There's lots of ways to get that, but one of them is to balance your Vijnamaya kosha, and then you can see more clearly. And then finally, when you get down to the bliss body, the heart, when that area of yourself is balanced, you are always in contact with that which is relational and greater than you. And when you have that, you are filled up. You feel like you're not alone, and you feel like everything is okay, even when maybe the externals aren't okay. And that bliss is the bliss that really comes from knowing yourself. So what we're going to be working on is, again, balancing across all the koshas so you can move towards your own enlightenment in this way. And you can do it in life with the obligations and the external factors that are all around you. My work and my personal self and the work I share with others as a yoga therapist is all based on being able to do this and to be a yogi right within the world. So those are the koshas. The other thing we're going to use is an Ayurvedic concept a little bit. And these Ayurvedic concepts are called the doshas. So you might have heard these concepts before, these ideas before, and the doshas are vata, pitta, and kapha. These are the energies that are present in all the world, and these three energies are what create us. And these need to be balanced too. So we all have these elements in us, and sometimes it is a good kind of lens to view yourself through the doshas, so that you can see which dosha is off and in what way you should practice. So we're going to work with the doshas, vata, pitta, and kapha, which I'll explain to you in a moment. And we're going to work with them within the koshas. So that might, make your mind melt, and you feel like you're doing math. But it's actually similar than you think. So in physical practice, you'll be doing one of three types of practice based on your doshic imbalance. So if you're more vata, you might do this kind of practice, and if you're more pitta, you might do this kind of practice, and if you're more kapha, you might do this kind of practice. And what you'll see is that will help guide you for which practice balances your physical body. So I could just give everybody one practice to balance the physical body, and it might work okay. There are definitely practices that are good for everyone. That's why, I'm sure many of you go to yoga class and enjoy it. But when you really get more pinpointed with these doshas and what's more individual to you, you can fine tune it more, and that's when the magic happens. So we'll be working with vata, pitta, and kapha. So I just wanted to talk briefly about each of these what are called doshas and what they are. So vata is the air and ether element. And basically, there's a few things you'd want to know about vata. The big thing is that, when vata is balanced, things are going really well. So vata is air, and it tends to, be in balance, just like the air kind of moves here or there. But when you balance your vata, that's when you feel really together. Vata then becomes elevated, it becomes prana, and you have access across your koshas when the vata is balanced. When vata is imbalanced, it's the part of you that feels scattered. It's the part of you that makes it so your thoughts move from one thing to another, which is actually natural, but when it's kind of happening too much, that is a vata imbalance. Vata is also associated with dryness, so when you're physically off vata-wise, dry skin would be kind of a really common vata imbalance symptom. Now, the way I look at work with the doshas is not so much, you are vata, you are this. We're more looking at what kind of imbalances do you regularly have? So if you're someone that's like, I can't keep it together, I can't move in a linear fashion, my thoughts are all over the place, and physically maybe a kind of common vata trait would be being hyper flexible, and another common vata trait would be problems in the pelvic area of your body, so this lower part of your body here, that's all vata. So we're going to be looking at, and I'm just giving you an overview view now so the idea's in your head. But we're going to be looking at, I tend to go out of balance in this vata way, so I'm going to try these vata practices and see if they balance me more. So that's vata. Pitta, when it goes out of balance, when pitta is balanced, it's great. Pitta is like, when it's elevated, it becomes tejas, and that's like the juice that gives you spiritual discrimination. So when your pitta is really humming, everything's going well, you also get a lot done, and that's really cool. It's the fire element, you could think of it as. It's also related to water, but the easiest way to remember it is that's fire, and it's like that spark. It's really related to discrimination. So when pitta is balanced, you have really good discrimination. You know exactly what to do. A lot of people who have a lot of balanced pitta in them are very intelligent, are very kind of get up and go, they get a lot done. But when it's unbalanced, you get a bunch of problems. And one of the problems with unbalanced pitta would be that get up and go, right, becomes like really type A stuff, and you sort of can't stop. So if you feel like, I'm often anxious and like moving forward when I don't want to. The other thing that could come out of that is frustration and anger. So that would be kind of a pitta imbalance. Another possibility in the pitta world is stuff to do with digestion, because pitta governs digestion and digestive fire, so not really getting your nutrients properly. So a bunch of health concerns in that way would be a pitta imbalance. Often autoimmune diseases have a pitta component. But I think the main thing with pitta imbalance is the inability to relax. So unlike vata, where you're kind of scattered, pitta is like you really can't relax. And if that's you might be working with some of these pitta balancing practices, right, to help you move further. So just for a quick example, if you're doing a lot of really intense asana and that feels really good to you and you feel like you're pitta imbalance and then that helps you, that would make sense actually. But we'd have to refine that even further, right? Because now you're still like really kind of jacked and juiced up and you're still having problems kind of getting really, really, really level. So that would be an indication that your pitta is a little off, and we'll have to work with that. And then finally, the third dosha is kapha, which is best to think of as earth. And the big thing with kapha is momentum. So really, when kapha, kapha elevates to ojas, which is kind of like, I like to think of it as the stuff of love, right? So really balanced kapha people, right? Really open. They have a lot to give. It's their heart's open, and this is the kapha area, so it relates to the heart. And so when it's going well, you have a lot of kind of inertia, and that inertia is good inertia, sort of like slow and grounded and steady, and every day you're getting up and you're doing, in a good way, the same kinds of things that move you towards your goals. And if that's, a deeper spiritual life, then you're moving towards that goal. If it's a fulfilling work life, you're moving towards that goal, but not in a way that's difficult for you, just in an open, grounded way. So when kapha goes off, we have a problem with inertia, and usually that inertia is not moving, right? So the couch potato, those times in your life where you're depressed and you can't see the world from an open-hearted place. Everything just kind of sucks. That is a kapha imbalance, and that's how I usually see it. It can also be things related to the heart and lungs, and there's often correlations between sort of this posture and depression and heart problems. There's been some studies that link those together. So in our world, that's all kapha. So we'll be looking at if that's your issue, how to balance your kapha. And the one thing you might have noticed from me speaking about those few things is that, balance, they're all good and they elevate into something amazing. So everything in you has the potential to transform and move you more towards your goal in yoga, which is to be a more open, transparent, energetic, connected person, right? So even if your kapha is, off and you're depressed, you can turn that around. There are practices to help you. So we've got 5 koshas and 3 doshas. The problem is they're both shas, so they sound similar. So again, 5 koshas, the aspects of the self: body, pranic body, conscious mind, unconscious intuition mind, heart. 5 aspects of the self. And then 3 energies that sort of govern us: vata, which is air; pitta, which is fire; and kapha, which is earth. And how do we balance all of these things so everything goes better for us in our lives? And that's what we're looking at.